You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Hurricane Sally put on a very impressive intensification display earlier this afternoon and may continue that later this evening. It's currently got winds of 90 miles per hour and a pressure of, what did they give it in the end? Currently a pressure of 986 millibars. They initially had it 985, moving west-northwest at 7 miles per hour. It is one of 5 active tropical cyclones in the Atlantic Basin, along with Hurricane Paulette, which is a Category 2, Tropical Depression Rene, which is still going actually, looks like it's finally going to lose that battle shortly. Tropical Storm Teddy, the large one at the bottom of your screen, and now Tropical Storm Vicky, which is off the Cape Verde Islands to the northwest there. That means we've only got one conventional storm name left before we reach the end of the naming list, which has only happened once in the memorable 2005 hurricane season. But here's the thing, we're 3 weeks ahead of where 2005 was. Just let that sink in for a moment whilst we take a look at Sally, which could make a significant hurricane landfall on the Gulf Coast, especially at the current rate of its intensification. My name is Nathan Foy. I'm joined by our team, which at this hour consists of Amy, David, and Thomas. Good evening to you all.
Hi, Nathan.
So you heard that intro and many points to pick on there. I imagine we'll be starting with Sally, though.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe bet. Sally showed a very impressive intensification phase earlier today of the likes that I don't think any of us were really expecting to quite the extent it did. We knew that as soon as that low-level and mid-level center aligned, we were going to see some sort of intensification, but this storm really went boom. The good news is right now, hasn't looked to intensify too much within the past hour or two, as it is having to realign its structure some, due to the fact that really in particular that southwestern quadrant is quite weak compared to the rest of the storm. Bad news is, as soon as that southwestern quadrant becomes more robust, we're probably going to see intensification at a similar rate.
Although, when we look at this satellite imagery, and this is the sandwich imagery, could I be a little bit hopeful in suggesting that maybe there's a bit of dry air intrusion?
I think that's definitely reasonable. I think Doppler radar also kind of shows some dry air intruding. The problem is that it looks like that eye wall is really getting closed off and it's quite small. So the other possibility is that the CDO that's currently over this is going to wane significantly and the storm itself is going to get quite a bit smaller. And you can actually see it on that radar you're showing on the stream there.
Yep.
The eye itself is quite small. So I'm not sure just how much that dry air would be impacting the structure of the system overall, but recon definitely indicates that it is disrupting the maximum sustained winds within it. So that's good news for now. We'll see if that remains. This has really good conditions to continue to intensify, though, and it's got about, 36 hours to do it at this point?
Be a bit less than that. I think we're down to about 24 hours now, maybe 30.
Sounds reasonable. Yeah,
Silas says hi, and a remarkable show of support there. And we are really going to be backing that up with huge upgrades coming up towards the end of the year in our coverage. If you thought it wasn't good already. We'll take more questions as we did this morning on our stream. We had a stream at 9 Eastern time, I think it was, for an hour, and we're here again now. I'm not sure how long we're staying here. We've put aside 4 hours in case we're here for the whole duration there, but we'll be on here for the time being. So the storm right now, would you still be on board with west-northwest?
West-northwestward movement. I'd be on board with the west-northwestward movement over the past couple of hours. I'd almost argue that there's a due west component to it, though, especially in the latest frames. Something else that's interesting to note is that that center of circulation, where it's perceived to be, also might change a little bit as a result of that waning convection on the southern side. So it's not the easiest to tell on satellite. On your radar, it's easier to tell that it looks like it's a west-northwesterly movement.
Yeah, and it does look rather robust from my experience of seeing radars. Certainly tight. The southern side, you can't really read much into that because it's on the far side of the radar. But certainly it's a band and a half, isn't it, there?
Absolutely. I think that it is a very robust tropical cyclone, and compared to earlier today, it's remarkable how much it's intensified, and it's worrying. The hope is that we're going to have this restructuring phase take longer than expected, and as a result, we're not going to see something much stronger than this. National Hurricane Center, though, at this time is forecasting a 105-mile-per-hour peak for the storm, which puts it well within Category 2 range. And even with that, that doesn't look to be the biggest threat with this storm. It looks like we could have over 15 inches of rainfall in multiple areas. And with that, Devon has actually upgraded the CDPS very recently to a Stage 6 on the storm. It was a Stage 5 earlier today.
Stage 6, that's quite destructive. I keep forgetting what previous storms have been to try and compare. What was Laura in the end? Was that a 7?
I believe it was a Stage 7 in the end.
7. So, Stage 6, 1 down from Laura. And were there rumblings that the National Hurricane Center may up the forecast intensity at their next update? We'll have that news, by the way, when they do update at the end of this hour.
Yeah, there were some rumblings of that. We don't know for sure, of course, until they actually do it. But there is some evidence to suggest that they would do that, especially considering, first of all, the unexpected intensification in the first place.
Yep.
Second of all, SHIPS is now supporting some rapid intensification with ships, even their rapid intensification 25 knots in 24 hours, saying that this could peak at 120, 125 miles an hour, which is a suggestion that I don't like to make.
Check out this satellite loop. It's just remarkable how this storm blew up over the course of 12. It's something that you would normally see in the deep tropical West Pacific.
Yes, it reminds me a lot of Kamuri, actually, to some extent, just in that convective blow-up.
Can you think of any reason in particular why this storm has done that?
Biggest reason that I can see is that low-level and mid-level center were decoupled for a long time, and there was a new convective burst that went up over the low-level center, and it shot the mid-level center right around it. So you had the center stack, which released a bunch of energy on top of the fact you had a new burst happening anyway. I think that resulted in this big blow-up that we're seeing.
And let's just take a look at visible here. Is this yes, this is the rapid scan. And again, Thomas, we are looking at what I've been thinking for a while, and we had this morning, but again, you can see two sides of the eye, as it were, blowing up convective tops. And this happened during Laura, and it seems to happen quite commonly with rapidly intensifying systems.
It's not a good sign for what's to come, because again, what the theory is right now with Sally is that while its winds aren't going up and its pressure isn't actually going down, right now it's improving its structure. And as soon as that structure gets better, we're going to see pressure start to rapidly deepen again. And we're going to start to see rapid intensification again. It's nearly inevitable that will happen. It's just a matter of when. So this halt in intensification that's shown in recon data is almost definitely temporary, unfortunately. The question is, when does it start intensifying again? And that's going to be critical as to just how strong it can get before wind shear starts to get to it and landfall occurs.
Clap Ryan also supporting our work there. Thank you very much. And as I often say, the changes that are made throughout the year on our updates, I hope, continue to get better and better, and that we provide the coverage as best we can. If you have any questions for us, you can start your message with Force 13 all in text in the chat section. There's only 4 of us on at the moment in the fake studio, as it were, here, but so we'll take quite a few questions. David, have you got any thoughts on this right now?
She's looking considerably better than 24 hours ago. And I mentioned in the previous stream that people need to be monitoring this very closely. I particularly note what Thomas had said so far, and I'm just monitoring the Hurricane Sally hashtag, and it's starting to ramp up in activity. Storm surge, the rainfall factor, and I've just been reading some of the information from the NHC, and I'm reading with great interest to see what they're going to say in their pending advisory or update.
We will all be there, of course, and that update
Yes.
will be out in less than 50 minutes. We don't know exactly when it will be released. Sometimes they do it quite early. I'd imagine they'll leave it just a little bit at the moment. Also to point out that flood-related watches and warnings are already in effect for quite large parts of Alabama and also for part of Mississippi and the Florida Panhandle region. And a few flood advisories or hydrologic outlooks, actually, in parts of western and northern Georgia, and a few flood warnings already in place scattered across the storm zone. See if I can go through a handful of these. Let's see, just trying to see if we can get any of these. The Bayou Sara at Sara Land, moderate flooding is forecast there. That's in Mobile County. Flood warning for the Perdido River near Barino Park, affecting Baldwin and Escambia counties. Pascagoula at Merrill, affecting Greene, Jackson, and George counties. Minor flooding forecast there. Flood warning for the Styx River near Elsinore, affecting Baldwin County. So a lot of very similar regions. Fish River near Silver Hill in Baldwin County, Alabama. And west and east, Hobolochito Creek in Pearl River County in Mississippi. Quite a few others out there as well, but that just gives you a little flavour of what's going on. That we are expecting potentially widespread flooding from this system. And have we been looking? I haven't been looking at rainfall estimates recently, but what's on the table now for the forecast?
Thomas?
Any idea?
So when it comes to rainfall for Sally, we're looking at National Hurricane Center's forecasting over 15 inches in some spots. They don't explicitly say on their color table anywhere over 20 inches, but I would expect locally up to 25 inches being a possibility. So basically, if you're anywhere within that hurricane warning in particular for Sally, which is on the NHC graphic there, which is basically from all the way through mid-Louisiana, all the way to the Alabama-Florida border, I'd be preparing for at least 10 inches of rain. And I would be prepared for some pretty bad flooding. Storm surge is also going to be a real issue here, with the Hurricane Center predicting up to 11 feet in some spots.
Was that for anywhere in the cone, did you say?
Anywhere on the cone, I was thinking the hurricane warning area
Oh,
would be
okay.
where you could prepare for over 10 inches of rain. And some areas in particular, the National Hurricane Center has on their graphic anywhere from around the Mississippi-Alabama border to the Alabama-Florida border in particular. That's where they're expecting the most rain at over 15 inches.
Reiterating the current warnings, storm surge warning in effect for Port Fourchon, Louisiana to the Alabama-Florida border, Lake Pontchartrain, Lake Maurepas, and Lake Bourne and Mobile Bay. Hurricane warning for Morgan City, Louisiana to the Alabama-Florida border, including those lakes once more, and metropolitan New Orleans. A tropical storm warning for the Alabama-Florida border to Indian Pass, Florida, and Intracoastal City, Louisiana to west of Morgan City, and a tropical storm watch for Indian Pass to Ocklawakanee River, Florida. That's been in effect for quite some time, actually. Tropical storm winds extend out from Sally about 110 nautical miles in the northeast and southeast quadrants, which is about 100 and 125 statute miles. And they're expecting, or they were expecting, a peak of 105 miles an hour. I'm hearing things on the ground that maybe it's already at 105 miles per hour. Can we substantiate this at all?
So when it comes to 105 mile per hour winds that were speculated, I believe that was from a flight earlier. But I don't believe that there's, at least when I was looking at recon, I never found anything that substantiated.
When was that,
105
though?
per hour.
We
Yeah,
know
I
how
don't
fast
know.
this is intensifying.
I mean, I did find earlier today a non-suspect 100 mile per hour reading,
Right.
multiple close to 100 miles per hour. The rationale behind why not to use that is because the rain rate spiked along with it, and it was found in a relatively small area. And when they made another northeastern pass, they couldn't find those same winds again.
Right.
So for now, I wouldn't say it's 105 miles per hour, but I'll be interested to see if the National Hurricane Center upgrades it to a Category 2 at the next advisory.
It's a tough one because usually when you get a Category 2 storm, you sort of expect to see an eye by that point. Of course, it's not mandatory, and you can sort of see half of one. I don't know. Radar indicates an eye, I suppose.
Yes, there's definitely an eye wall in there. It's just a question of is that eye wrapped all the way around, and then is that going to be able to sustain 100 miles an hour?
We're not
If
going to
I
add.
were,
We almost did just then. That was a slip of my finger.
well, yeah, I mean, if I were making the call, I'd still call it at 90
I'm
miles an
looking
hour.
at the wider Atlantic right now. You can see everything that's going on. You can see actually that Sally is larger than Paulette now, pretty much.
Yeah,
About the same
Sally's gotten
size.
huge. Yeah, Sally again, like you said, just blew up today, and Paulette, which was the at least for a while the bigger story, now fading away as it's impacted Bermuda and is really it's really moved away from Bermuda. The only thing they
Yep.
have to worry about is high surf and rip currents. The question now is just will it be able to get to Category 4 before it begins its weakening phase? That's really all that we're asking now is just how intense will it get. But when it comes to real land impacts, there's not much to it
Models aren't
anymore.
keen, but the National Hurricane Center's last forecast called for a peak of 125 miles an hour, which, as you know, is just shy of Category 4. And I wouldn't completely discount that this storm could still affect the Azores.
That's also fair. In about 5 days, the models all show rapid weakening as soon as that southward turn occurs. I assume it's because shear skyrockets, because that's not a natural movement for a tropical cyclone. So I'd assume shear's going to be nuts. But I mean, a tropical storm's possible. I believe we released a cone earlier today. I know National Hurricane Center makes it post-tropical.
Well, you can see that
We-
cone there. It really sinks in those last in the last 24 hours of that track, and it does make you wonder. Even if it does turn post-tropical, might there still be a chance for it in the future after that?
I mean, I don't rule it out. It could redevelop. I would assume that the remnant low of Paulette would dissipate shortly afterwards, as Renee's is going to do here within the next day or
Well,
so.
I think the theory really is that it's going south, and then it's having a little dance with Teddy, and then it will probably follow Teddy as it goes to the Atlantic graveyard.
Yeah. And Teddy's looking like it could become pretty intense too. Luckily, at least in the foreseeable future, we're not expecting any land impacts. But long range Bermuda might need to watch again. We'll
Again,
see.
and
Yes.
GFS at 12Z has shifted the forecast track to Bermuda pretty much on day 7 and 8, I think it was, or maybe 8 and 9. And we saw with Paulette, it was initially not forecast to hit Bermuda, and then, well, it did. And now we have Teddy, so we'll have to see on that one. But are we pretty sure that Teddy won't affect North America?
Oh,
I'm not really certain of it at this point.
Can't be certain. Did you say?
No, not 100% certain.
I'm going to say
Right.
possibility, Nathan, and I just want to cut in with your intro. We've got the African wave at 50% closer to the African coast, and then we've got the one to the north of the Bay of Campeche, and
Yes,
that's
those are. Yep.
20%.
Just to make sure that people aren't losing track here, there are 7 areas of interest in the Atlantic. 5 of them are actually tropical cyclones, and you can see all 5 of them on this screen. That's Hurricane Sally, Hurricane Paulette from left to right, Tropical Depression Rene, Tropical Storm Teddy, and Tropical Storm Vicky on the right-hand side. Not looking so great, actually. Down towards the southeast there, just in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see a bit more convection. That's another wave, and that's now got a 50% chance of development, and that would get the final name on the conventional naming list if it did get that far.
That would be Wilfred, right?
That would be
Yeah.
Wilfred, and if that happened, then that beat Wilma, it could beat Wilma by a month. Because I think Wilma formed on something like the 18th of October, or maybe a little bit.
Oh yeah, and not just that. There's also the area of convection down in the Gulf, like
There
not
is that.
just Sally.
Yeah, I'm
And
not. I mean, we've never been convinced really with that one. Let's see if we can have a little look at that again. Well, there it is. It's looking better today, actually.
20%.
It is looking
Yeah, that's
better
what I was gonna
today.
say. That's what I was gonna
Right.
say.
5 days.
GFS showing hints of genesis occurring around Thursday night into Friday.
For
But that
what?
would be the only time. For the wave in the Gulf.
Oh,
It doesn't actually show the storm developing, but it shows a closed isobar down there, which means that
oh boy, that
It's
means
not
it will get
impossible.
named. Is that the GFS?
Yeah, that's the GFS.
So that means it will be a named storm because the GFS has been downplaying everything so far.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Well,
but CMC doesn't develop it too much in the first bit, but after Sally moves out, apparently this Gulf wave, if the CMC solution were to verify, really takes advantage of its environment. Oh, of course, CMC does develop it into a named storm. Well, that's CMC
For the Gulf.
for you. But it does it after the
No,
5-day
don't
forecast
say that's
period.
the CMC for you. It's been doing well this year.
Well, the CMC's been developing everything that can develop, and it's always done that. It's just this year it happens that everything that can develop seems like it will develop.
It's a case of the broken watch being right twice a day, yeah.
Yeah.
We're also joined by Euxinator right now. You heard him briefly earlier. Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
And you're watching from the Tampa Bay area. Still just about within the storm's influence, Sally.
Yeah. I think that we will be getting out of the influence of the storm probably within the next 24 hours or so. Because as it moves more to the west, and to the north, in fact. I know people who were in New Orleans who decided to go down, to come home from just for cautious, measures, and even though it won't like directly impact New Orleans, it will still impact the area from Outer Bands at the very least, even if it doesn't directly impact them.
And the radar imagery shows that a few little I mean, what we can say about New Orleans is that it's on the western side, so that's much less, less rainfall there on the western side. All the banding going out east there of the center. New Orleans, I think, will tentatively not do especially bad, especially if this storm moves north sooner, but we'll have to watch it very closely. But we're really looking at places like Biloxi, Gulfport, Mobile, places like that.
Yeah, those are looking like the hot spots, and it's to be noted that they're not only going to be getting maximum sustained winds probably over 100 miles per hour when this arrives ashore. It's more than likely that they'll also be receiving torrential rainfall and dangerous storm surge. The Weather Prediction Center yesterday issued an extremely rare Day 3 high risk for excessive rainfall, and they've maintained that high risk into Day 2. I can't remember the last time for a tropical cyclone they issued a Day 3 excessive rainfall outlook with a high risk. I'm sure it's happened, but it hasn't happened in a long time, and it certainly hasn't happened this year. So it's definitely not a good sign, to say the least.
Nathan, I'd just like to, sorry guys, I'd just like to direct a question to Thomas, and it follows on to the 3-day outlook. What about the tornado risk over the next 3 to 4 days?
I would say weak tornadoes. I don't see any strong tornadoes. I do know someone was saying that, and I'm not gonna mention their name, but it's not. It's like at the worst, it'll probably just be weak tornadoes. Like I don't see a tornado outbreak occurring from this. Like Uzzias earlier this year.
Well,
But
now,
I do mention that Uzzias was also Cat 1 when that tornado outbreak did occur, so anything is possible. But I also want to mention really quick, while I'm talking, they found through a recent recon pass that there were 80 knot winds in the weakest section of the storm.
They did. I just looked at this. Yeah, flight level. They're finding over hurricane force winds in the weakest section of the storm. That means that what radar was indicating and what it looked like on satellite with those new bursts, Nathan, it looks like you're right. You said that normally when those hot towers occur around that eye feature, that's a sign of a rapidly intensifying storm. If this translates to the rest of it, it's safe to say that that rapid intensification phase has resumed. So
and radar is indicating that the eye is getting clearer here.
It is, and it looks like pressure is rapidly dipping. We're already at 988, and we're not even in the eye yet. So
I've heard that from the NOAA 3, there was a 975 millibar drop zone, 55 knot splash wind.
No.
I think. I'm not sure. I cannot confirm this, but I did see some.
All right, before we get on to that, I just want to introduce Nelson, who's joining us from New Orleans, and has a camera there, although it is sideways, I must advise you, Nelson. There it is. And that is looking out somewhere along the coast. I'm not sure exactly where. He's available.
Yes, I am at the lakefront in New Orleans right now. It's trying not to take vertical video. I don't know why the app made it go sideways like that. As you can see, it's choppy on the south shore of the lake. Usually where you see the swells as they go down, that's about the normal water level. Certainly the wind's coming in from the northeast at this point. I'd say, I don't know if you can hear them through the microphone, but it's probably right now around 10 miles an hour. And I put a few things in the live comms room. I had to crossed over the flood control structure to get here. All of the left doors are now closed. You cannot get a car onto Lakeshore Drive, which is the parkway behind me.
So that's closed,
They're
yeah?
up in the dead zone. Yes, it is. We closed the automobile traffic. I have seen families come down here, just take a walk along the lake shore. There is a patio there in the distance, where a number of people are just sitting down, enjoying a breezy day.
Yeah.
People are still exercising out here. We do have time to go back. You may or may not be able to see a couple gentlemen walking along the top of the flood control structure. But right now, it's not too bad at the lakefront. It will get worse, especially with the winds coming from the north, as we expect to be on the west side of the storm.
So what are your plans now, Nelson? Are you staying put?
I am, unless there is a major change in the track of the storm, which puts it either directly over New Orleans or directly to me. I will be staying put in my house. I just got
Oh, wow.
I will be staying at my house. I live in a fairly high area. The place where my house was during the flooding from Katrina only had
Nelson,
about
we're gonna have to leave you there. We're really struggling through all that wind noise.
I do apologize for that, and I'll leave the video on for a little bit, but
Sure.
I just wanted to come show the way.
Thanks very much for that insight, Nelson. So that's the view from his place there, not too far away from the storm itself. We're also joined by Kay at this time. Hello.
Hello, Nathan.
What are your thoughts on this storm? Would you agree that it could be starting that rapid intensification phase once more?
Well, I've been trying to get a good grip on the structure of the storm from radar and recon, and from what I can tell, this very strong standing feature to the north of the centre, which had the strongest winds earlier, is not where the eye is forming, surprisingly.
Oh.
It seems that this much smaller bit, with only at the moment 40 to 50, maybe up to 55 knots SFMRs at best, is a rather small formative eye. But since the last plane was in there, flight level winds have gone up from 50, 60 knots to 70 knots, where there's very little reflexivity on radar, which is surprising.
I do have some news about Renee.
Okay.
It is a remnant low
Oh,
now.
it's
and
gone.
The Hurricane Center has issued their final advisory.
Oh, Renee, it's finally given up the ghost. Tropical depression Renee is gone.
Nathan, I just
The remnant's down to, still 30 miles an hour, 1,011 millibars. It's gone. So sad. And there it goes. David.
I posted in the room here, posting from off Twitter, elevated platform 160 meters above the Gulf had winds gusting to 93 knots, 107 miles per hour, sustained winds near 75 miles per hour.
David,
And,
the update's out on Teddy, up to 50 miles per hour at this point, and a pressure of 1,002 millibars. They're expecting a peak of 120 miles per hour now.
I do want to give, so remember when I said earlier that there was apparently a reading that had 975 millibars in the 55 knot drop zone? Well, apparently that reading has come out and looks like it could be true.
Is
No,
out.
it's
I want to
erroneous
clarify
drop.
that's not at the surface.
Oh, it isn't?
We
Oh,
don't
is it?
have surface data. That's still at
Oh.
about the
That's something else?
925 millibar height.
Okay.
Oh, I
So that's
apologize.
still above the surface by a significant margin. I would not take credence into that to run with a
Alright.
minimum central pressure.
Alright, I apologize for that, but
The update on Vicky is out now. Wind speed 45 miles per hour, still pressure 1,002 millibars, so really no change on this, and that will remain a tropical storm for another 24 to 36 hours maybe. Although it isn't looking that great, honestly, on the satellite imagery. It's on the far right-hand side of the screen there.
Nathan, I was going to ask Thomas a few minutes ago whether he could bring up the vorticity information because I'm just curious on Teddy and the area in the Gulf of Mexico, or the northern area of the Bay of Campeche. I just want to see, but Teddy is one that will need. If it tracks further west, well then what is it, the Leeward Islands are going to?
They should watch, but I don't think it's going there.
Well, then again, I can ask Thomas this question: the ridging, the high pressure system up there in the Atlantic, the what is it, the Bermuda High, anything over the states that could actually push these away from the US. I know it's early days, but Teddy and that one coming off the African coast. So Teddy and the one closer to the African coast, they're the two that I'm going to follow. And the wild card could be the one in the Gulf of Mexico.
Let's hope not.
Right, that is true. That is true.
So that is a big question, David, but I think that I can give you a fair sort of answer. So we have Vicky, Teddy, and this third wave near the MDR on my screen at the moment. And you can see Paulette moving out here shortly. The GFS, what the GFS does, if I can get the model to load, which would be preferable, is it brings in this ridge heading in over the Atlantic, but there's this weakness, this big weakness created by Paulette. This is going to bring Teddy northward. So we already know with fair certainty that Teddy won't be much of a threat to the United States, at least in the short term. Now, a solution that could occur is that we do have the ridge strengthen more than anticipated after Paulette moves out. You have the storm stall and then start to take the curve toward the United States. That's a possible solution.
When you scroll forward as well, it does get a bit lost, doesn't it? It really slows down.
It does, and it does start to take more of a westward movement. But you'll notice there we have this giant ridge that's really basically preparing to recurve Teddy out to sea. Now the timing of this ridge, which could be off by the time we're getting into the 6-7 day time frame by up to a day, could significantly impact how the storm responds. You can see actually it almost goes due north there, and we've been seeing a westward shift with time. So while I'd probably say that Teddy won't be an impact to the United States long term, I can't say that for sure. There's certainly a possibility that this westward shift does continue. Outside of that, assuming that the other system develops that we were talking about, I can't say with any certainty whether that would actually impact the United States or not, because it's still not certain that it'll develop in the first place.
That's also true. Giving it 50% now, though.
It is, yeah. And
the update is out on probably the least interesting storm. That's Karina in the eastern Pacific, still 45 miles per hour, a pressure of 1001 millibars. If you want to have a look at it, we'll spend about half a minute looking at it. There it is. Not looking too bad, actually, on the visible imagery there in the eastern Pacific. Easy to spot. Moving northwest and not likely to affect any land areas, which means that we're now just waiting for the updates on Paulette and Sally. And as soon as they come in, we will let you know what the latest information is. If you've missed it, Renee is finally dead, officially. It is now remnant low, and Teddy is already starting to intensify, now up to 50 miles per hour. We're now joined by Ethan. Hello. If he's there. He's been waiting a while to speak, so I think he's just...
Hello.
Oh, hello, good evening.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Just having a brief moment in the live stream here. Continuing to monitor the tropical situation. It's very busy out there.
It certainly is. Well, do you agree that we could be seeing the start of another rapid intensification phase on Sally?
I haven't looked at many recon ratings, but for now, I don't think that it's rapidly intensifying right now. I think that phase has more turned into a slow intensification phase now. However, the most important thing to note is when that storm, in around 24 to 36 hours, it's going to be making that turn towards the north. And it's going to be moving pretty much at a crawl, right? And it's
Fairly
just a matter
slow.
of time before that storm makes that northward turn, and intensification phase could even slow once that northward turn happens due to land interaction, or it could even speed up if it stays farther offshore.
The update on Paulette is out. As expected, the warnings have been discontinued in Bermuda. The intensity of Paulette remains at 105 miles per hour, a pressure of 965, and they are expecting still 125 mile an hour peak, and they are now expecting it to turn post-tropical on day 3.
Interesting.
So significantly sooner than previously forecast.
Very interesting.
It's interesting indeed, but
And would that have any implications on the future storms?
I mean, I don't think that would. I think the only thing is that it means that the size of Paulette's influence could be larger than what was anticipated before, which could result in a bigger break in the ridge, which means that Teddy could really take advantage of that and not only have a faster movement, but would really become a significantly lower threat to the United States, I think.
We've been so busy this hour looking at the observations and looking at all of these storms in detail with our team, we haven't taken any questions yet, really. But we will do a lot more of that in the next hour of coverage on this. We are still waiting for the National Hurricane Center's update on Sally, so let's see if we can take a couple now, if there's any coming through here. Why do weaker storms that form in the Atlantic look better than Gulf storms? Interesting question.
It is interesting. I don't know.
I'm not sure they always do. You look at Gonzalo
No,
this year.
I mean, you've had Laura looked fantastic in the Gulf,
Yeah.
and you've had like Katrina, which looked great.
Rita.
I mean, you've had a lot. Rita looked great in the Gulf of Mexico.
I think they were talking about the weaker storms.
Yes, I mean, when you compare something like Barry to Teddy, I think there's no contest on which storm has better appearance. Then you have Colin, which was in the Gulf.
Oh no.
And that was something else. But literally something else. It wasn't tropical. But moving on. I mean, you know.
Yes, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Let's see, and actually we haven't mentioned this yet about just how crazy this season is getting, and we certainly openly acknowledge, I certainly do at this point, that we will probably get to Greek letters by the weekend.
So
You
that's
think
what
by the
you're
weekend
wanting.
we'll be at Greek letters?
Yeah, because you've got this wave, that 50%, which will become the next storm, and then you've got on day 5 or 6 a new system, possibly even emerging from Sally, actually, much like, was it Omar did from Laura?
And
Something like that
don't
again.
forget the other system in the Gulf that could possibly be named as well.
And the update is out on Sally. Storm surge warning has been extended eastward along the coast of the Florida Panhandle to the Okaloosa-Walton County line. Hurricane warning extended eastward to Navarre in Florida. And the tropical storm warning west of Morgan City has been discontinued. The tropical storm watch along the coast of the Florida Panhandle has been discontinued. It's now a Category 2 with winds of 100 miles per hour and a pressure of 987. Interestingly, how that's gone up. They're expecting expecting a peak of 110 miles per hour prior to landfall and then to move inland. So that's the latest news right now, that Sally is a Category 2 with winds of 100 miles per hour.
That's some big news that the Hurricane Center ran with that. It was definitely borderline with recon data, but you know, they ran with it. That's some big news. And I think
The
that
pressure.
can't understand
pressure-
what happened to the pressure, though.
Well, it looks like, and I think Kay mentioned a little bit of this, that banding feature on radar was the core of the system, I believe, earlier today, and there's been a new core that's kind of developed within that. And so basically now you have a tighter core with the same pressure, you're going to get stronger winds. There was some chatter earlier today about how the pressure on Sally hasn't really been sinking, but that wind field's been tightening up some. So I think that's probably what happened here.
And we'll get the latest information up on the screen as soon as my hands can type it. So we'll have that shortly. So stay tuned for that if you missed it just now. I've actually made one or two little typos in there as well, National Hurricane Center. Go ahead.
We have a change in the storm surge forecast. The Ocean Springs, Mississippi to Dolphin Island, Alabama, including Mobile Bay, now can expect 6 to 9 feet of storm surge.
Quite significant. Let's see if they've changed any of the rainfall estimates. Looking at this here, rainfall. Sally is expected to be a slow-moving system as it approaches land, producing 8 to 16 inches of rainfall with isolated amounts of 24 over portions of the central Gulf Coast, from the western Florida Panhandle to far southeast Louisiana. Life-threatening flash flooding is likely. And then when it moves inland, it could be 4 to 8 inches across the southeast, with isolated maximums of 12 inches across portions of eastern Mississippi, central Alabama, northern Georgia, and the western Carolinas. Significant flash and urban flooding is likely, as well as widespread minor to moderate flooding on some rivers. So,
Pre-discussion for Sally is out.
before you get onto that, just to reiterate, the big change is then that Sally is now 100 mile an hour Category 2 hurricane. As soon as we can get that on the graphic, we will have that shown, but I'm saying verbally at least that it is a Category 2 storm. Paulette is also a Category 2, so there's two of them active right now, 105 miles per hour on that one. Rene is a remnant low, Teddy is up to 50 miles per hour, Vicky is still at 45.
Based on the National Hurricane Center's discussion, the cone has shifted even more to the east.
That's not a surprise. I wonder how much.
I've got it on my screen.
I know that they were forecasting a landfall near Biloxi. I'm not sure where they are
Looks-
now.
Just get
Looks
to
like
this
it's
here.
near the Mississippi-Alabama border.
Just leave that up on the screen for a little while whilst I finish typing things. So there you can see it once again. Certainly moved east. Actually, I think that just about might put New Orleans out of the cone.
Yeah, I believe so.
So that's good news for Nelson.
It's definitely good news for Wilson. So,
But it does not mean that he will not get impacted by the Outer Banks.
Certainly.
So he still needs to keep an eye on those, because those could also be
Well, you
bad,
saw
'cause-
those waves. I mean, if you're not careful, you're in trouble there.
Yeah, and plus, there's also the potential, like a small potential for like tornadoes, like we saw with Isaias. But then again, Isaias was also a freak scenario that I don't think anyone was expecting.
Just a little bit. So looking back on the satellite imagery, somewhere, there it is once again. So that northern side of what appears to be the center of the storm really blowing up in those latest frames. Let's just check the radar once again. There's the radar, and you can see that. So Thomas, we're talking about where is the center now, because there are two areas that could be the center there.
So I'd assume if you're looking at recon, you can see those two wind peaks as well, which is interesting. But I would think that the center on radar, especially on your radar, is on that southern side where you can see that almost full ring. I'm presuming that's where the center is on that southern side. I think that is if there are multiple
very
areas,
bottom
that could
part.
potentially be the center. the very bottom part, yes.
Okay,
is
that's what
where
I
the
always
tornado
thought. But
intersects.
then you see that little area up there, and another band that's sort of getting away a little bit, as if the center might be sort of there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to say the least, and it almost begs the question of a couple things. First of all, is this the beginnings of an eyewall replacement
Well,
cycle? And second of all, uh, regardless of that, is this storm about to have some structural problems continue to hinder its intensification? That would certainly be good news.
a relief to some degree. The Teddy forecast, I've just been looking at the cone there, 3 major hurricane icons on that, and it takes it in the general direction of Bermuda. So,
That's
I'm not sure
not
if it was
good.
mentioned, but they are forecasting a peak of 120 for Teddy.
yes. And still 125 for Paulette. So it's all going on in the Atlantic. If you're wondering why we're not talking about anything in other basins, that's because there is nothing. It's all concentrated in the Atlantic basin, where we briefly had 5 tropical cyclones. It is now down to 4, thanks to Rene's demise. But you never know, it might be back to 5 again with that new African wave.
Nathan, just picking up on that, the amount of systems in the Atlantic, is that a record?
I think it tied a record.
Tied. It didn't break a record.
And when was that set? The how far back?
1990s, I think. Somewhere. Even 1998.
1971.
Oh, never mind.
Devon
In
was talking about how it he thinks it happened in 1992 as well. I've not checked, honestly.
He says HERDAP indicated there were more than 5 cyclones active at once, but I don't know about that.
I don't know either. I'm supposed to be the historian.
Well, we had an official tweet from the NHC saying the only other time was...
Oh, did they? I didn't know they
Yeah.
actually said that themselves.
Yeah, they made a tweet about it.
Wow.
So you can see little bits of showers moving over the coast of mainly the Florida-Alabama border there. Could be producing some isolated thunderstorm and squall activity. But the main band is, well, it's about to arrive really for that whole coastline. Amy was showing earlier a webcam. We didn't manage to get to that. I wonder... Well, actually, first we'll look at the surge graphic that you've got on the screen. Then maybe we could go to that.
Sure. I'm looking at the storm surge inundation map that the National Hurricane Center has on their website, and this is for southeastern Louisiana, where 7 to 11 feet, I believe, that's still the value of storm surge could occur.
Now the red's there, that's over 9 feet. That's the area that
Yeah.
would be submerged. The orange is 6 to 9.
Yes, and you can even see, I'll go to Mobile Bay. You can see how far inland that surge will get. This is a bit outdated. This is from about 2 Eastern time, and now they're expecting 6 to 9 feet, so these values may rise when that graphic comes out. But I will go to the webcam.
Sure. Remind us where this is again. There's people out there.
This is at Gulf Shores in
Oh,
Alabama.
Is this a different one?
This, I believe it's on the same beach.
Yeah, it looks
but
like
it's
it.
not up against the water like the other one was. It has started raining since I last looked at this. There is double red flags out, so those people should definitely
Oh,
not be
dear.
out there at the water.
They've zoomed in on them as well. Oh dear. Off they go.
I hope they don't get into the water because that's very dangerous. Rip currents and high surf. That's not very good. And I have seen, looks like some lifeguards patrolling the beach, telling people to get back.
Mhm.
I don't know if they're doing that anymore, but I hope those.
Is that a vehicle approaching in the distance? I think it might be.
It's hard to tell with I assume it's raining here, so
Yep.
the lens is a bit. Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah. So that might be them.
Yeah, I believe they're patrolling the beach, as double red flags typically means the beach is closed, so they want to make sure nobody's in the water. I'm glad that those people retreated back.
Yeah.
Let's see if we've got any questions then. Start your message with Force 13 all in text in the chat section on our YouTube stream right now, and we'll be able to get onto some of these. I imagine a lot will come in, so I can't guarantee we'll get through everything.
Also,
Mm-hmm.
I do want to mention that in the Mediterranean we have a possible subtropical storm too. So just wanted to
Yes,
say-
that's coming up shortly.
Yeah.
It's not good. Everywhere is lit up right now.
Yes, if you're in the Atlantic Ocean, you're not a happy camper right now. It's rough.
Really rough.
And unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to be seeing much of a halt in this activity either, which is probably the worst part, especially from our perspective, just knowing what.
I gotta say though, looking at Sally right now, I'm not fully convinced by it. It looks almost like it's being cut into two. And
Yeah,
I'm not sure what you make of this.
Well, the NHC discussion, for the first time, I believe, noted that Sally could approach major hurricane strength.
Well, doubtless, because they're forecasting 110 miles an hour.
Yes. But I don't think they'd said it in writing before.
That's an interesting question. Will 2020 be 2001 in ACE? And will we get to Greeks by late September? I'll say the answer to the second question is yes.
Is that 2001?
Not sure why that year in particular. I know it had a few strong out-to-sea storms, and one or two that affected Central America as well. Let's see what else we have then. It seems crazy that in Atlantic we've had 6 named debuts this year. Yeah, is it actually 6 now?
Yeah, and if with Wilford forms it'd be 7.
Well, that's bound to happen. And any more news on Recon right now? Because everyone's always eager to know what's happening with them.
They're we're waiting for them to make their next pass. They went through from southwest to northeast on the first time. Found those strong flight level winds with very weak surface winds comparatively in the southwest part of that potential eye wall. Nothing really in the northeast. They just found a really wide area of messy maximum wind radii.
Interesting. How's the Madden-Julian oscillation looking like? Anyone got the latest on that?
I believe it's between phase 3 and 4, and in the next week going to move into phase 5 and 6.
And can you remind us what this actually means for those people who aren't familiar?
Well, currently, phase 3 and 4 favours the development of tropical waves in the main development region,
Yep.
which we've definitely seen come to fruition. As it moves into phase 5 and 6, it might favour some activity in the West Pacific while making activity perhaps a bit less potent in the Atlantic.
Just a bit.
Yes, given the strength of the other climatological features, it will swing very quickly round to favouring the Atlantic again on its journey around the world.
Wow. More questions here. Could this get up to Category 3? I assume you mean Sally. Yes, it could. Paulette could also get to Category 3, and Teddy could also get to Category 3. Just so you know.
Teddy is forecasted to get to Category 3, and it has been for like the past days
Since the
or two.
start, really. Almost. What peak intensity do we think Teddy will have? Well, Category 3, they're saying they've nudged it up to 120 miles an hour. Wouldn't be surprised if there's more nudges upwards, especially if it keeps going. It's already 50 miles an hour. And let's see what else we have here. Just trying to look through some questions. I can't understand half of them though.
Also, Recon apparently has. I'm not sure if this is true, but apparently they confirmed that there's a pinhole eye in Sally.
Excellent. That's the last thing you might want to hear. Oh, the radar's conked out on us at the moment. Well, I'll tell you what, at this point, we'll take a short break here, and we'll be back in a couple of moments with more information and the very latest from Sally and everything else in the Atlantic on this crazy part of the season that we're currently in. Yep, so we're back here on the air. No fancy music coming out of that one, but okay. This is Force 13 Live. Hurricane Sally, if you missed it, is now up to a Category 2 with winds of 100 miles per hour and a pressure of 987 millibars. If you also missed it, Rene has died, so we're down to 4 active tropical cyclones, although the combined power of all of these systems is increasing because Paulette is also a Category 2, and also you have Teddy, which is now up to 50 miles per hour, and Tropical Storm Vicky that formed earlier today. I'm under the impression that some people don't even realize that Teddy and Vicky have formed at this point, but they have. My name is Nathan Foy. I'm joined by the team for another hour of coverage here. David, Kay, Thomas, and Yuxineda. Let's first go to Kay with some news.
Yes, the new recon in the storm, which has flown out from Houston after relocating out of the path of Sally. It has given us its first fix, and it found that the feature we identified in radar is an eye, and it is only 4 nautical miles wide with a partial opening in the southeast. However, the wind speeds are significantly lower than that has been found in the large band to the north, and it's only got 70 knot flight level winds and 50 knot surface winds at this point, so it's not even a hurricane strength eye wall.
More that I look at this imagery, the more I think it's got 2 eye walls.
Well, it's less of 2 eye walls and more of a small weak eye, and then a very strong banding feature, which has the hurricane force winds.
I don't know.
There's nothing to the south or west of this small eye. It's all to the north and east.
Yeah.
That doesn't count as an eye, in my opinion. Just a very strong banding feature.
Yeah, but I don't recall banding features with 100 mile per hour sustained winds. It's like, what counts? Is it a really large open eye with a smaller one forming within it? Like I'm kind of confused about the structure,
If the larger thing were an eye, it would be massive. It would be on the scale of Wilma's eye passing over Miami.
Would it?
Yeah. It looks to be 20, 30 nautical miles. If it were a eye and you drew out a circle based on the band.
Interesting. So we've got plenty of questions that are coming in, and we're happy to take them whilst we're on the air. I don't know how long we'll be running here, how we're going to schedule our time. We're obviously not going to run all the way until landfall yet, because it could be another day or so, day and a half, but we'll obviously keep you posted to our schedule as soon as we know what it is. What does a pinhole eye mean is a question that a few people have been asking.
I can definitely explain that. A pinhole eye is a feature that shows up in some tropical cyclones, and it allows them to intensify much more quickly than with a larger eye. And a brilliant example of this happening is Charlie of 2004, which went from not much stronger than Sally is now to a 150 mile an hour category 4 in 6 hours just prior to landfall.
Wow.
And if Sally really does have a forming pinhole eye, it could very realistically shoot up in intensity over the next 12 hours or so.
Yeah, and that's
don't
the
want
scary
that.
part. Because the thing is just think about it. It's like around 6 hours ago, it was 65 mile per hour tropical storm. Now it's Cat 2. So it's very realistic that we could see this intensifying way past what the NHC is predicting. But I would keep that on the low. Like, I don't think that will happen.
Because at the moment, it's only forming, and we saw in Marco that just because it has a pinhole eye doesn't mean it will intensify. Marco formed a very small eye of the same size twice, and then it just broke apart and it didn't get beyond a minimal hurricane.
So conditions still look good for the storm right now, and the National Hurricane Center expect further intensification to 110 miles per hour before landfall, already at 100. Unless, are they implying at all that it might peak between those points? And that would suggest Category 3. I've not looked at their discussion yet, but I thought maybe one of you would have picked that up if that was the case.
Their wording implies that they're not going to explicitly say, because they're forecasting 110, and 1 mile an hour stronger is technically a Category 3. So they're basically saying it will be a borderline case.
Do you think a hurricane will reach Nova Scotia this year? Decent chance. It could be Teddy.
It could be, yeah. It very well could be Teddy. That was what I was about to say. Teddy could very well do that. I think the latest GFS run actually shows that exact solution.
Really?
So, it doesn't show that exact solution. I just looked at it. It shows it going just to the east as a 950 millibar post-tropical cyclone.
Yeah, they're going to have at least a couple more close calls. Paulette, not really a close call, but they are getting a bit closer right now.
Yeah, I don't see Paulette being of much more impact to land at all as a tropical entity.
But, it's, 100 or 200 miles offshore. It's, the storms are trending closer as we get further into the fall months.
Yeah, and I think that October in particular could get rough when it comes to where these storms do go. So
we're also now joined by Mike. Good evening.
Yes, good evening. I have radar from Mobile, Alabama.
That's what we've been showing a lot of the time as well. So here's another perspective from Mobile. And what's your take on that radar imagery?
Well, we could see it looks to be an eye, maybe an eye popping out right in the southern portion of this center here. I mean, maybe a Schwent, if you know, that might look like an eye trying to form. I'm not sure. It's kind of hard to tell if maybe I can go to base velocity.
It probably is, but you're looking at
confirmed that it is.
yeah, you're looking at that. But then you look at this as well, Thomas. You're looking at, you can see the outer ring as well there.
You can.
On the velocities.
So it's almost it's a bizarre structure, to say the least.
And looking at the movement, it looks almost due west right now. West northwest.
So it is what it is in that regard. Yeah, it's this west to west northwest kind of movement. It's slowing down, that's for certain, and it's expected to sit over basically a vat of ocean heat content, unfortunately, which means that the only thing that's really going to stand in the way of Sally for now is itself. And it looks like Sally's really had a bizarre phase when it comes to its current structure. It looks fantastic on infrared imagery, really compared to what it did earlier today. But I don't know. I'm going to be interested to watch what this storm does.
And Mike, you're also showing us, what's that, a 3D image?
Yes, this is a 3D volume scan of the cloud that the radar's picking up and rendering.
Apart from it looking really cool, what can we actually determine from this imagery?
Well, as you could see on the north, if we go ahead and tilt it here, you can see on the north, I believe that is the northwest. Oh my gosh, northwestern quadrant. Losing my words. Excuse me. You can see that those taller thunderstorms are definitely appearing, showing it that it's strengthening, meaning it's going to wrap itself around here, therefore bringing more energy to the system. Now, earlier, these cloud tops were actually, if I go ahead and look at the altitude scan, we got cloud tops nearing 50,000 feet. Earlier, we had 55, nearly 60,000 feet tall with these thunderstorms. And it shows that, the thunderstorms have gotten a little, the reason why they did that is the storm did that is because it got more organized, it got more settled, and it got its act together. And I do expect these cloud tops to rise significantly in the next 12 hours.
Yeah, very interesting to see that. Oh, there's another view there as well.
This is precipitable water.
Yeah. So the National Hurricane Center, if you've not seen the latest cones, you can see that hurricane warnings up to the Florida border, tropical storm warnings extending eastwards, and quite a substantial wind field as well. This storm Sally's probably about as big as Paulette is right now, and Bermuda has finally let go of its warnings. This is actually, I thought I'd already updated these, but let's just try that one again. That is up to date there. Yep, extending into Florida by this point. That's what I thought. They had extended it. And there it is again for Paulette. So, yeah, turning post-tropical there before it makes that southerly turn now, they think. And passing the Azores as a post-tropical storm. So, no threat to land as a tropical cyclone for Paulette is what they're thinking.
Yeah, that is what it appears like, which is certainly good news. I mean, Paulette's already done enough to Bermuda, and it looks like it still has yet to peak. So, really, now it's just...
Yeah, I guess I'll change it to Teddy then. See if we can get Teddy's cone. There's Teddy. So you can see they're expecting major hurricane and the cone ballooning out towards the general direction of Bermuda by day 5 onwards. Shouldn't affect the Lesser Antilles, but its future beyond day 5, uncertain.
The latest GFS guidance indicated that it would make a close approach to Bermuda around the 8th day from now, and the ensemble mean pressure was indicative of a major hurricane at that point.
All right, let's see what more questions we have. Quite a few at this point. What CDPS stage is it right now? Devon said earlier, what did he say?
Stage 6.
Stage 6, which is considered, is that the catastrophic variety, or?
I think that's still devastating.
Devastating.
I think we go into catastrophic at stage 7.
And to be a stage 7, he said it would need to be a category 4 at landfall.
There are a few more interesting questions here. Let me just try and find them. When did the National Hurricane Center update Sally and Paulette? 3 hours or 1 hour? They haven't started 1 hourly updates yet. I'm not sure when they will on Sally. But it's 3 hourly on Sally. Paulette now is back to 6 hourly because the warnings are gone. So it's only Sally that you'll have an update at, what time will it be? 7 p.m. Central.
When the next update for Sally comes out, and that'll be, we won't get a new forecast then, but we will get a new intensity estimate, and I will be interested to see how the storm structure is by that time.
A lot's probably going to change. What is the ace of this season now?
It's in the 50s.
In the 50s. And how are we compared to average now? I think we've just gone slightly above.
Yes, we are slightly above average.
It's actually reached 60 now. We've reached 60 ace.
Well, it was 50 only this morning, as far as I'm aware, or maybe that's yesterday evening.
On the figures I'm looking at, it's 60 now.
Well, that's a very short time for the ace to go up so much.
From what I'm seeing here, it was just about to reach 57 2 days ago.
There are different ways of calculating it.
Yep, there are.
And they give different results.
They certainly do. More questions then. Will we reach the Greek alphabet? I think it's safe to say yes. We don't usually say things categorically, but with only one storm to go, and us being 3 weeks ahead of 2005, which got 6 letters into the Greek alphabet, I think it's pretty safe to say that we will.
To agree. I would be stunned if we don't get 2 more storms before the end of the season.
Considering that one is already a 50% chance near Africa.
To be honest, I would not be surprised if we even got past the Zeta this time.
I know. Let's see, what else have we got? Could Sally dump 30 inches of rain in Pensacola?
Not in Pensacola. No, probably not. Pensacola right now, if I were in Pensacola, I'd probably be expecting about 6 to 12 inches of rain. Probably 8 to 12 if I were to narrow it in. Places that could expect 25 plus inches of rain, I'd say if you're in particular, if you're on the Alabama.
Sorry about that. Looks like we had a little breakdown there on this stream. You'll have to repeat what you just said there.
Okay, I'm just checking something real quick. Alright, we are still on the air. So, yeah, what I was just saying about... I've lost my train of thought.
Perfect timing.
This is unfortunate. Yeah.
Locations that are more susceptible to high rainfall amounts.
Oh, yeah, when it comes to rainfall amounts, yeah, that's what we were talking about. I'd say that if you're on the Mississippi-Alabama border, especially if you're on the Alabama side, you could expect over 25 inches of rain there. I think if you're in Pensacola, though, 8 to 12 inches is a safe forecast.
Let's see what else we have at this point. What model has performed the best this year with cyclones?
It's a hard one. When it comes to Genesis, CMC,
Nothing
to be
really.
honest, has done really well compared to
Well,
other models.
The
And
UK's done well on track. Got several storms really good. Gonzalo, Laura, Marco did all of those well for track.
the H-Wharf has done well this year.
I knew that would get a
especially
mention.
recently.
Particularly with Recon.
Yes.
And just in case you wanted to know, that model is predicting 120 miles an hour from Sally.
Oh my. Yeah, H-Wharf's done a good job. H-Mon hasn't really been on its game this year, compared to H-Wharf in particular. But yeah, I think CMC and H-Wharf are the two best. CMC for Genesis and H-Wharf for overall track and intensity guidance.
Interestingly, the HWRF and the HMON model have the remnants of Sally pretty much moving back over the Northern Gulf again when it's done.
Oh my! Really?
I don't think it will regenerate. Let's just say that.
If it were to, that would be a crazy. That would be kind of nuts, wouldn't it?
Well, it's a very 2020 thing to do. Will Sally hit New Orleans and cause the flooding Katrina did? Most certainly not, you would think.
Thankfully.
Why is Sally getting a gap on radar? Well, that's most likely the eye, if it's the gap I think you're talking about, although there are a few gaps in this imagery. It may look like that the eye is open. That's because it's really on the edge of the radar scope. The radar can't really see the southern side. It probably does have yellows and oranges on the south side as well, just that we can't see it.
Yeah, so it's a fair assessment of what's going on
Recon's currently making a path along the coast, and they're finding 50 knot damaging winds just offshore of the barrier islands at this point.
Yeah, the wind field is pretty big on Sally, and we're already likely seeing some tropical storm force winds coming ashore,
It's really
if not
robust,
right now.
especially that northern band, which, as we were talking about earlier, appears to be where the strongest winds of the storm are.
And that there was the voice of Elliot. Good evening to you as well, and you keep very close eyes on Recon, so I'm sure we'll be well informed on that.
Definitely.
Are they doing anything right now?
It looks like they're setting up for a northwest to southeast pass, so they're likely going to sample on this upcoming pass probably some of the strongest winds in the storm, I think. So we'll get a pretty good snapshot of intensity after that.
And there is another Recon plane that's taken off from Florida, although I'm not aware whether that's going to be a high altitude or low level reconnaissance mission at this point.
Okay. Should people on the Alabama and Mississippi coast evacuate?
I look at what local officials have to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, we
your
can't
local
make that
news
call.
media probably has more information on what you should do than we do. We're really good with large-scale stuff like what the hurricane's doing and where it's going to go and what impacts to expect. But when it comes to preparations and evacuations, that's something to leave to the local officials that know the area better than we do. So I'd definitely be checking with local officials and local government websites to figure out what exactly the preparations you should take are.
Loads more questions here as well. How's Vicky? One of the least important storms out there, Vicky. I mean, really, I'm not impressed by it. Looking at that satellite imagery, it's on the far right-hand side there, looking not very tropical cyclone-like. I mean, it is, but it's not looking good.
No, Vicky does not look. It looks less than good. It looks like it could be a remnant low at any time.
Oh dear. Question.
Its center is nearly gone.
With the path Vicky is going, will it hit the Caribbean and intensify like Irma did? No, it's not
No.
going anywhere near. It will die off in a day and a half at most.
With the way it's looking now, I wouldn't be shocked to see it do it later tonight.
Could Teddy impact North Carolina? That's another question there.
That's a
With
long
rip
shot.
currents,
What was
Yeah,
that?
rip
with rip
currents
currents.
will be an issue.
Yep.
Long term, don't know what direct impacts Teddy could bring. Probably not. I'm not going to rule it out completely, but I'd say probably not.
At this point, if Teddy does impact land, it'll most likely be Bermuda, in fact.
Yes.
What are our thoughts that we make it to the Greek alphabet? Well, I've mentioned this a few times, and it's pretty much certain. It could even happen at the end of this week. Not for certain whether it will happen that soon, but next week maybe you'll see the first Greek names. It would be ridiculous if anywhere near that happened. 2005, the record holder. Alpha formed around, what was it, October 22nd, 23rd, something like that?
Yeah.
A little bit earlier than that, but yeah,
little bit
definitely
earlier.
not in September.
At least mid-October, so about a month ahead of 2005 if we get W and Alpha anytime soon, and it looks like we're going to get at least one of those. So it really is a crazy season. It can't be overstated, really, because we are about to enter uncharted territory, even though in terms of actual energy generated by these storms, it's not actually that much above average.
Yeah.
For now.
For now. Yep, there's a lot more to come, probably.
But another thing to note is that we've had a lot of systems rapidly develop up to landfall, meaning that we haven't had a lot of energy generated from long-lasting out-to-sea systems.
Yes.
So the impacts don't necessarily correlate to the energy generated in this season.
Absolutely. Why is Sally so large on radar, yet the actual activity has just started hitting the US? I'm not sure if you mean satellite, because it looks much larger on satellite than radar, but who wants to take an answer to that question?
I believe that would have to do with outflow and cirrus clouds, because only in the very deep convection, when you have thunderstorms, is when you will have the impacts begin.
And that is Wyatt right now, who is probably
Yep.
the closest person to the center of Sally in
Oh, yeah.
Pensacola. You're now under a hurricane warning, aren't you?
Yep, and I was actually down at the Pensacola Beach Pier, just to get a look at the conditions. The waves were absolutely massive out there. I'm telling, like 10, 15 feet waves, and I was measuring the wind speeds. I measured a wind gust of about 35 miles an hour out there.
Certainly getting stormy out there.
Yeah, and the bands are just offshore now, so
Drifting
much
ever
longer
closer
before.
drifting ever closer to land, and looking at those bands, you can see it here on the Mobile radar. You're talking just a handful of miles off the coast at Destin there, and a little bit further from Pensacola.
But like the concerning thing is, like, a lot of the models have shifted once again into Alabama, like Mobile Bay or even Baldwin County with that. And honestly, just looking at the way it's moving, it's looking like that there's a good chance that will happen. Yeah.
I'm still not sold. It's still moving west-northwest, but I'm not sure where it's going to end up just at this moment.
Yeah, it's looking more northwest to me, but I could be wrong.
It depends on what you look at. If you look at what I perceive that could be this outer eye, in inverted commas, that looks like it's moving more northwest. This so-called inner one that we're looking at, although it's starting to look a bit floppy in those latest frames, is much more west-northwest, almost due west. Thomas, have you got any new thoughts on this?
I am starting to think that your theory about there being multiple eye walls may have some credence. I've been looking over some old recon data, and there are multiple wind maxes, particularly in the northwestern quadrant, where you can see it best on radar. And the first wind max was with that first outer, what you could perceive as an eye wall, and the second one, the inner, and they're in similar strength. So it's a strange thing where, first of all, it's a 4 nautical mile wide eye. If we remember what happened with Nana, that it doesn't sustain itself. It's probably going to collapse in on itself. That's not going to really be the main eye. So it's probably going on right now is that eye's getting choked off, I would presume, and there's another one that's in the process of taking its place. You can also actually see that theory supported, number one, by the fact that well outside of where that first where that smaller eye wall is on latest recon, there's that wind max. And then secondly, there are actually 2 wind maxes on the northeastern side of the storm. So I think that, yeah, your theory is probably correct, that there's a second eye wall that's beginning to build there.
And it's rare that any of my theories are correct.
Something that could be happening instead is that there are many strong banding features, and it hasn't consolidated the eye wall yet, so we're seeing a lot of equal wind peaks because one of them hasn't become dominant, and when it does, the others would be cleared out in a little bit, and it would be much easier to see the structure.
Mike, we're looking at base velocity now. What can you tell us about this?
Something interesting I noticed was when I went over to the northern side, you could see that the positive and negative velocity, which was when the wind overlaps each other in opposite directions, you could see that the negative velocity has kind of had an undercut over the positive velocity, which is quite an interesting feature. And that normally happens with rapidly intensifying cyclones. So if I continue, I'm going to look at this more and later on, but if I continue to see this negative velocity overlapping with this positive velocity, we could still see further rapid intensification for at least another 12, maybe even 24 hours.
Yeah.
That doesn't look good.
I'm kind of glad we prepared early, to be honest with you, because now everybody's like in town is rushing to get water and gasoline and food and stuff, and we prepared early.
Elliot, over to you now with the recon pages.
Yeah, recon is looking pretty interesting. I mean, not super interesting, but they are looking as if they're about to turn back into the center and begin the northwest to southeast pass. So I think we're going to get a pretty good glimpse of just the true intensity of the storm pretty soon.
I can now confirm that the second recon mission is also low-level reconnaissance, so we'll have double fixes for the next couple of hours.
Well, that's going to be cool.
It also looks like there's an extrapolated pressure fix on recon right now of 990 millibars on their latest fix.
That wasn't extrapolated, that was a drop zone, so the pressure's been rising even more.
Pressure's risen even more. How does this make sense? 90 miles an hour and what was it, 85 miles an hour 985, and now 100 miles an hour 987, and now it could be what, 100 miles an hour 990. Really? I don't know.
Yeah, that's unusual.
I mean, when you take a look at that northeastern pass, it looks like it's significantly weaker. So I think that there's a significant disruption in the storm structure, to say the least.
Is that, and like what we were talking about with the like we saw like how it looks like it has maybe 2 eye walls. Is it possible that it's undergoing an eye wall replacement cycle?
Certainly.
It didn't have much of an eye to be replaced in the first place.
No.
That's fair. But I think that what was attempting to be an eye that could really tighten up those pressure gradients is starting to go away. So what I'm almost thinking at this point is perhaps we could see this weaken to a Category 1 by the next advisory before re-strengthening occurs. Because this is a significant disruption to the structure, assuming that the recon findings in that northeastern pass were correct. So
what might have happened is that a larger eye formed and it began to intensify quickly. But then this smaller eye started forming inside it and cut off the larger eye from strengthening to a certain degree, which is causing the overall pressure to drop. But it's now organizing and allowing itself to re-strengthen once it sorts out these issues.
We'll see. It's definitely been a strange past few hours, to say the least, with the way that this storm has been behaving.
You just saw the National Hurricane Center's advisories, the special advisories ticking up that wind speed. Just thought, oh, here we go. But we still are in a here we go scenario, but at least it appears that it isn't going to get to major hurricane status in the next hour.
Thankfully.
Yes, that is true, and that's definitely good news. But I will say to those of you that are along the Gulf Coast, this is, first of all, good news overall, that the storm is having disruptions. Second of all, doesn't mean you should let your guard down. Even if this makes landfall at its current estimated intensity of 100 mile per hour winds, that's still pretty damaging, and it's not even the most damaging factor. It's going to be the storm surge and heavy rain that will be the biggest concerns. So regardless of the wind speed of the storm, that's not the main reason you should be taking your precautions in the first place. Even if this were a tropical storm with the rainfall accumulations that we're expecting, I would presume that the precautions for a lot of these areas would be very similar.
Now look at this visible satellite imagery. It looks to me as though maybe a large chunk of the eastern side has been choked off here. Although, in the very latest frames, a few towers just starting to blow up there in those very late frames in that area. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens in the next half hour to an hour. If that sustains.
We'll see if this will be able to fan out that convection and continue its attempt to reorganize. So we'll see
what you're not seeing anymore is mainly those hot towers that we were talking about earlier that were wrapping around a rapidly developing eye, and also the center point there, quite discernible now, just looks a bit weak.
Yeah, it does, and I think that Recon's probably going to find a weaker storm here when it moves on through here in a little while. Again, I keep on reiterating that northeastern pass, it was significantly weaker than it's been in previous passes. So we'll see what we get as we fly through the northwestern quadrant, and we'll see if we get some sort of crazy spike in intensity again, or if this is starting to level off. I think it's safe to say that all of us here are going to be keeping a very close eye on this.
I will, for sure.
Yes, indeed. Just trying to get the radar back here. It looks like we've got it again. Sometimes it flickers off, but there we are right now. And those bands literally hanging on the coastline there of the Florida coast and into Alabama, and looks like rainfall amounts are going to start to be on the rise now.
A word that I would use to describe this storm is volatile.
Volatile.
Going up and down intensity potentially very quickly, which means that if it goes down in the short term, that's by no means to say it won't go up again just as quickly as it did earlier today in the longer term. There's very pronounced radar inflow with multiple feeder bands visible, strong rain band features, and again this small eye which is coming in and out of focus on the edge of the radar limit.
That it is doing, yes.
Something else to note, Nathan, is you know those hot towers that you saw invisible, you can actually see those being new thunderstorms developing on radar. They're in the same place. You can actually see that if you pay attention over there on that northeastern side, if you take a look
at
those new showers.
See it.
But there are those new thunderstorms. If you look in that gap there It's there. You can see those new storms developing. That's I looked at visible. That's almost directly where those hot towers are on
Are
visible.
we talking about this area here that I'm circling? Something like that?
I'll have to see because there's a little bit of stream delay.
Yes. That
but
sort of area?
It still hasn't happened on the
Oh.
screen yet. But I'm gonna assume yes. Yes, that area. Yes, I just saw you circle it. That
there
is
it is on the high resolution as well. Looking very interesting there, and as you can see on this, most of it still just offshore, and a few showers inland as well, just north of Biloxi there, northwest of Mobile. Some significant rain showers by the looks of things, but generally still pretty quiet just for a few more minutes along the coastline. We'll take more questions on the air right now. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. We're now getting a bit more of an idea of what schedule we're going to do. We're going to finish up here at the end of the hour, and then we will have another update, probably a standard video update on the storm later tonight on our channel. And if necessary, I think Thomas will be running more coverage later on.
So we'll see what happens tonight, but in the event that something crazy happens or the storm becomes a major hurricane or in some other way a significantly higher threat to land, yeah, we'll have more coverage running later this evening.
All right, some questions. Could Sally be a major hurricane? Yes. What happened to the eastern side of Sally? It's still there. Maybe it's coming back. Do we think the storm is gradually strengthening or weakening? Or is it rapidly doing so? Or has it leveled off?
I think it's leveled off for the moment, but I think gradual strengthening could resume. Especially considering the highly favorable environment and then those hot towers we saw that developed quickly on the radar as well.
More of a pertinent question here, and that's when is landfall expected? Well, that's pretty up in the air now. Let me just see if I can get the latest indication from some of the mesoscale models, which sometimes do a good job at nailing a landfall time, even though it doesn't always do the intensity right. But let's see. I'm just trying to have a look. They're actually in quite a bit of disagreement too, even in a short range, 24 hours. There's some disagreement amongst them. It's very interesting to note. The NAM thinks that it will scoot on over to the mouth of the Mississippi River, so almost due west movement for the next 18 to 24 hours, and then it pretty sharply turns north, makes landfall in Mississippi. It could do that. One of the others is saying that it will move more... what is that one doing, actually? That one's out of date. That's what the problem is. Looks like that one's more northwest. One or two others suggesting different things. No real indications that we're going to see a more, say, due north movement from here. And the RGEM model actually still takes it south of the mouth of the Mississippi River. I don't think that's going to happen.
Certainly have doubts about that.
I have found something interesting that one of the mesoscale models, the HRRR model, showed the storm at about a 980 something pressure, and then it rose to the 990s before starting to strengthen again.
Interesting. And as for landfall time, the HRRR there, you're looking at tomorrow night at the earliest. The NAM, I think we're talking about the same, I think it said. And then you look at some of the global models, the GFS right now, it's actually just started to initialize the 18Z run, which is the very latest. And it's actually taking it nearly due west. It is taking it to the mouth of the Mississippi there. And for it to just past a few miles north Tuesday evening around this time. and then moves due north, possibly even an eastward element. So they're really not sure. GFS, they're calling for an ultimate landfall just west of Biloxi. Looks like that will be early hours of Wednesday, is what the GFS has just called for in their latest update forecast.
Well, that's definitely interesting to note. But yeah, I mean, you can even see the NHC's cone is quite large for just a day out or so. Comes to anywhere from the Mississippi, Louisiana border to just across the Alabama border into Florida. So,
Yeah.
Because it's rounding the high at the moment, and how quickly it does that is dependent on its intensity, and its intensity is completely up in the air at the moment.
yes.
We'll bring to you more model data as soon as it comes out. Obviously, the GFS is initializing right now. The icon actually is the first to come out usually, and it is calling for... What is that, actually? It's calling for Sally to move... Let me just try and get this right before we get onto it. We're back at the radar just for the time being. It's running really slowly. It looks like it's going to move northeast eventually. It's going to move west at first and then northeast and call for a landfall after passing just east of the Mississippi River, the mouth of the Mississippi. It then turns northeast and makes landfall just on the western edge of Mobile Bay. So
that's what some of the hurricane models kind of had earlier. Several of them actually had it kind of going to the northwest and then starting to move due north in about 12 hours. And then starting in about 24 hours, getting close to like Dauphin Island or Fort Morgan, and then moving into Mobile Bay. In fact, the TVCX and TVCN consensus aids and the UKXI and EGRI consensus aids take it into that similar area as well.
And the icon model as well calling for massive intensification actually of Teddy. By the end of day 3, it's probably a category 3 there.
Pretty significant.
Actually, that is what the NHC is saying, isn't it? They want it on day 3.
It is, yes. Yes.
So that's actually in line. Interesting to see nonetheless. What's Vicky then moves a little bit further west. This next system moving off Africa doesn't get much steam actually on the icon at least. But that's interesting to know. And actually, the icon model is developing the Gulf system. On day 4 and 5, thinks that it will become at least a tropical depression down there.
Oh dear.
So that's another revelation by one of the models. We'll see if the GFS follows that when it comes out that far. It's currently up to hour 54.
Bearing in mind what you said about the current AOI leaving the coast of Africa, if it weren't to develop immediately after leaving the coast, there are some longer-term indications that it might try to develop near the Leeward Islands, which would then make it a significant threat to land in the next week.
Yep, that wouldn't be very good. But certainly I would say chances increasing for the African wave. But of course the main feature tonight, we're still looking at Sally, a 100-mile-an-hour Category 2 storm. If you've just joined us for the first time today, you've missed a hell of a lot actually. We once had 5 tropical cyclones active. It's now down to 4 just. Rene died about an hour ago. Sally, of course, which was a tropical storm earlier today, is now a Category 2 hurricane. Paulette, a Category 2 as well. It made landfall on Bermuda as a Category 1 earlier this morning. Very early this morning. High-end Category 1 it did. Teddy formed. Vicky formed. And the African wave up to 50%. It's been a day that you'll see on the On This Day section in the future, probably.
And the recon is heading for the center. We have Air Force 305 going for a northwest to southeast. Should make the pass just after the top of the hour. And then we have the NOAA 2, which is about to make a due north to south pass, which should come in towards the lower half of the next hour.
Okay. And just looking at that GFS again, just to recap, early Wednesday morning would be the final landfall, which I don't know. Look at that infrared though, again, Thomas, as well, and you'll see there the convection has really waned, and it looks like a significant dry air slot.
Yeah, it does. I'm going to actually take a look at water vapor and see if I can see that more clearly. See if that's what that indeed is. And it's kind of it's like there's definitely inflow coming in through there that seems to be fueling the storm. I know Kay mentioned feeder bands that are clearly visible even on radar. But yeah, that could definitely be some dry air entrainment. The only thing that I can see from there is, though, that the upper atmosphere isn't really doesn't really have all that much dry air. The biggest thing that could be a dry air producer is smoke from the fires over in California has
Really?
made it into the subtropical jet. So
that
that could legitimately be part of the reason that this is occurring. But
wait till the news get on that one. Oh dear. I think, Nelson, are you able to speak to us right now? You're showing us some more imagery as well.
Yes, I am. What we have here is a velocity product from radar, and it's very interesting because these blue areas are the areas that of tropical storm force wind speeds, but you have to remember that the radar is tilted and doesn't take ground observations. Right now, the only ground observation is this little buoy just off of the Florida-Alabama border, showing 35 knot winds, actually 37 knots gusting to 51 knots. That is 42 miles an hour gusting 58. Now, if you look towards the center and you say, hey, recon's found these hurricane force winds, these category 2 hurricane force winds, why are we not seeing the greens and the yellows? Well, at this point, the radar beam is 15,000 feet above the surface of the Earth, and even a plane can fly at some points over a storm. I wouldn't recommend it because the hot towers will rise to flight level. But what's important is that you can get a general idea of where some winds are in the atmosphere. But as you see this map, it's really important also to get the ground truth and to get the observations from the hurricane hunters and NOAA, which are flying generally about 2,000 feet in the air when they take their SFMR readings.
Any comments from the team on that?
A lot of people rely on radar observations for finding wind speeds. I always say that radar comes second to recon data. Almost everything except for observations directly from the ground comes second to recon. Extrapolated surface winds from recon are normally my number one way of estimating intensity.
It's not come out properly yet, but there's rumblings that GFS might also be developing the Gulf system.
Really?
It's possible. I'll keep you up to date on that. That would be 2 out of 2 of the earlier models from 18Z that would support it if it's true.
Hey, there's a closed 1010 millibar isobar at 72 hours.
Yeah, 1009. So, who knows?
Also important to note that several systems this season, including Sally, formed with little to no model support
Yes.
before they formed.
Like
They did so anyway.
for Sally, we were looking at. There was actually, for many runs, just what, 3 or 4 days ago, maybe, no closed isobars.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, there's clearly quite a few now.
Yes.
The models have done not a great job at times when it comes to predicting storms, but well, GFS certainly at fault quite a lot there.
I'm looking at some new recon data.
Yep.
And I'm finding, again, 2 very distinct wind maxes
Right.
on the northwestern side, much more distinct than even last time.
Wow.
To such an extent that I think it's safe to say that there is some sort of concentric eye wall thing going on here, of some sort, or at least a powerful
Are you talking
outer
about
band.
the 305 recon?
Yeah, I'm talking about Air Force 305. It's really
That hasn't come through yet.
distinct.
Hasn't gotten to the center.
No, it hasn't gotten exactly to the center, but it's awfully close. You can see those 2 distinct wind maxes on my screen there. So that's at least indicative that there's a significant
Hold on a minute.
structural problem within the storm.
Onto your screen now, just point at those.
So you have those 2 distinct wind maxes in the latest recon observations, and I think it indicates that there's a concentric eye wall thing going on here. Kay might disagree. We'll hear in just a
Well,
second.
the outermost one is definitely just a rain band. The inner one might be associated with the stronger winds from earlier. The innermost eye wall is very small, and it's definitely not showing up on that yet. So we can't say really till it gets.
Yeah, actually, Thomas, that's right. The second one there, that I think is the outer one we've been talking about. No, the inner one on yours is the outer one that we've been looking at on radar, and the inner one is still yet to be reached.
Yeah, perhaps. Looks like I may have misread this, but regardless, it does show that the storm is struggling to get its structure together. The structure of the storm is not well enough organized for significant intensification at this point, I think.
What it seems, from my perspective, is that the very strong winds from earlier have been rotating around the center a bit, because earlier on, where the plane is now, so a couple of hours ago, we had those SFMR readings that supported an upgrade to Category 2 status, and there's nothing there now. Quite remarkable. Well, there's SFMR supportive of 75 knots, or 85 miles an hour, but nothing yet supporting Category 2.
That's very interesting. What a curious storm it's turning out to be. But for those on the ground, all we really need to know is that hurricane warnings remain in effect for large parts of the coastline. Let me just get that information again to remind everyone. Hurricane warning for Morgan City, Louisiana to Navarre, Florida, including Lake Pontchartrain and Lake Maurepas, including metropolitan New Orleans as well. But you can certainly see on this satellite imagery that the deep colors, the black colors there, showing the higher amounts of convection, really becoming a minority in those latest frames.
That might be, I know Nathan, you said it might be a dry air intrusion. I think that certainly might be. I think that you can really see a punch of dry air there in the very end. I mean, you can just see it punch right in. That could certainly be dry air intrusion. I'm not 100% sure what it is.
It'll be interesting if Recon flies over that area and they do some drop sounds.
Yeah, that would be good. I'm sure that they will eventually.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to find out what's going on with the core and the structure of the storm.
Yeah, for sure.
GFS also on board with a steady but quick intensification phase for Teddy. Steady Teddy, perhaps. and the Gulf system to peak, by the looks of things, in 3 days at 1007, but I wouldn't read much into that. That's the GFS model, which said that Sally would be, what, 1010 or something silly like that. So who knows what that might actually mean.
Yeah, I'd definitely be keeping an eye on things. Wouldn't be shocked to see that get designated as an invest, and I think that the National Hurricane Center actually has recon scheduled to fly into
Oh, really?
it at some point tomorrow, I believe.
Yes, I heard the same thing.
So
That's going to be a busy day. Another one.
yeah, for sure.
For the time being, we're finishing up our coverage for now. We hope the last 2 hours have been informative. We're not abandoning you, though. We will have more updates throughout this evening on our YouTube channel. I think there'll be at least one recorded update and maybe more live coverage if the storm, if Sally starts any other funny business, that's for sure. Of course, you can stay up to date on our social media platforms in the meantime, on Facebook and Twitter, and on our YouTube channel, Force 13. And you can communicate in our Discord server with over 1,050 other hurricane trackers and weather watchers around the world. Discord.gg/Force13. And we're also got running 2 live streams right now, automated. On the main channel, we've got a 24/7 feed of pretty much everything in the tropics, and on our Force 13 US channel we have got live imagery, uninterrupted imagery of Sally. But that's it from here for now. I know there were loads of questions that we just didn't get round to in the end. I hope we've done a decent service at any rate. Thanks very much to my team for taking part. And indeed giving us some observations on the ground. It's been very insightful and probably useful, not just to us, but to many people on the ground and nearby. So Sally is still on the way, and still a significant threat. Even if there's a possibility that it might have just leveled off for the time being, it could still intensify drastically. In the next 24 hours, it's done it once, it can easily do it again. But that's all for now tonight. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.